Queen Zara stood in the middle of her daughter's destroyed bedroom and felt like crying. Again. The latest nanny had just run out of the palace, tears streaming down her face, swearing she'd never come back. That made 15 nannies in 2 months. 15 highly trained, experienced professionals who couldn't handle one small 5-year-old girl. The room looked like a battlefield. Toys were scattered everywhere, broken into pieces. The curtains had been ripped down. There was water all over the floor from where Princess Lyra had somehow managed to flood the bathroom. And in the middle of it all sat the little princess herself, arms crossed, glaring at everyone like they were her enemies. Zara rubbed her tired eyes. She hadn't slept properly in weeks. Being the queen of an entire planet was hard enough, but being a single mother on top of that, it felt impossible some days. Her husband had died 2 years ago in a tragic accident, and since then, everything had fallen apart. Well, not everything. She still ruled her kingdom well. Her people loved her. But her daughter? That was a different story. "Your Majesty," one of her advisors said carefully, stepping around the puddles on the floor, "perhaps we should consider the boarding school option. There's an excellent facility on the northern continent. They specialize in difficult children." Difficult children. Zara felt anger flash through her. Her daughter wasn't difficult. She was hurting. She was a little girl who missed her father and didn't know how to express all the big feelings inside her. Sending her away would only make things worse. "No," Zara said firmly. "I won't send my daughter away. There has to be another solution, but what?" She'd tried everything. The best nannies in the kingdom. Child psychologists. Special tutors. Nothing worked. Lyra screamed at them all. She threw things, said mean words, and did everything possible to make them leave. And they always did leave. Every single one. The problem was that Zara barely had time to be with her daughter herself. Queens don't get days off. There were meetings from dawn until late at night. Trade agreements to negotiate. Laws to review. Disputes to settle. She loved her daughter more than anything in the universe, but she couldn't be there for her the way she needed to be. And Lyra knew it. Somehow that little girl understood that her mother was always choosing the kingdom over her. That night Zara worked late in her office as usual. The palace was quiet. Most of the staff had gone home. She liked these peaceful hours when she could think clearly without 100 people needing her attention. But tonight she couldn't focus. Her mind kept going back to Lyra, sleeping alone in that big bedroom, probably having nightmares again. Meanwhile, in the lower levels of the palace, a man named David was mopping the marble floors. He was human, which was rare on this alien planet. He'd come here 3 years ago with his 7-year-old son, Tommy, after his wife passed away. They'd needed a fresh start, somewhere far from all the painful memories. David worked as a night janitor at the palace. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid the bills. Barely. He actually worked 3 different jobs to afford their tiny apartment in the city. He cleaned the palace at night, worked at a restaurant during the day, and did delivery runs in the evening. He was always exhausted. His son was always alone. Tommy was struggling in school. He had no friends because David was never around to arrange playdates or take him to activities. The boy spent most of his time with a neighbor who watched him for cheap. David knew he was failing as a father, but what choice did he have? They needed money to survive. As David pushed his cleaning cart through the quiet hallways, he heard something that made him stop. Crying. Soft, scared crying coming from somewhere nearby. He looked around. He wasn't supposed to be in this section of the palace. This was the royal wing. If anyone caught him here, he'd probably get fired. But that crying, it sounded like a child. A frightened child. David left his cart and followed the sound. He found himself in a beautifully decorated hallway with paintings on the walls and thick carpets on the floor. The crying was coming from behind a large curtain. Slowly, carefully, he pulled the curtain back. There sat Princess Lyra, the kingdom's most famous troublemaker, hugging her knees and sobbing. She looked up at him with wide, scared eyes. Outside, thunder rumbled across the sky. Lightning flashed through the windows. "Hey," David said softly, crouching down to her level. "Are you okay?" Lyra stared at him. She'd never seen this man before. He was wearing a janitor's uniform and had kind eyes. He didn't look scared of her like everyone else did. "The storm," she whispered. "I don't like the loud noises." David sat down on the floor next to her, not too close, giving her space. "You know what? I used to be scared of storms too when I was your age. Really? Lyra wiped her eyes. Really? But then my dad told me something that helped. He said thunder is just the sky doing its job. It sounds scary, but it can't hurt you inside the palace. These walls are thick and strong. You're safe here. Another boom of thunder made Lyra jump. Without thinking, she moved closer to David. Where I come from on Earth, we have crazy storms. David continued in a calm, steady voice. Way bigger than this. I'll tell you about the time a storm knocked out all the power in our whole city. He started telling her the story, describing how his family had to use candles and flashlights, how they'd made it into an adventure, camping out in the living room and telling ghost stories. Lyra listened, her crying gradually stopping. She asked questions. She even smiled a little. David kept talking, one story leading into another. He told her about Earth seasons, about snow and beaches, about strange animals she'd never heard of. His voice was soothing, and Lyra felt herself getting sleepy. The storm didn't seem so scary anymore with this kind man sitting next to her. Eventually, her eyes closed. She leaned against him, completely exhausted from her earlier tantrum and the fear of the storm. David looked down at this tiny princess and felt his heart break a little. She was just a scared little kid. That's all. Just like his Tommy. He carefully picked her up and carried her to what he guessed was her bedroom. He laid her down on the bed and pulled a blanket over her. She didn't wake up. Her face looked peaceful now, all the anger gone. David stood there for a moment, looking at this child who'd driven away 15 nannies. He understood something that maybe those other caregivers hadn't. She wasn't bad. She wasn't difficult. She was grieving and scared and acting out because she didn't know what else to do. What David didn't know was that security cameras had recorded everything, every word, every gentle gesture. The way he'd treated the princess with simple kindness and patience, expecting nothing in return. He quietly left the room and went back to his cleaning cart. He finished his shift and went home to his sleeping son, thinking he'd probably never see that sad little princess again. But in her office, Queen Zara was watching the security footage, tears streaming down her face. She'd been alerted by the guards when they saw someone approaching her daughter. She'd been ready to call for his arrest. Instead, she'd watched this janitor, this human stranger, accomplish in 20 minutes what 15 trained professionals couldn't do in 2 months. He'd made her daughter feel safe. The next morning, David was getting ready for his restaurant shift when there was a knock on his apartment door. He opened it to find 2 royal guards in full uniform standing there. His heart sank. He was in trouble. He'd broken protocol by being in the royal wing. They were probably here to arrest him or deport him. David Chen? One guard asked formally. Yes, that's me. Look, I'm sorry about last night. I heard crying and I just wanted to help. I didn't mean to. The Queen requests your presence at the palace immediately. David felt sick. Tommy looked up from his breakfast with worried eyes. Dad, what's happening? It's okay, buddy. Just stay with Mrs. Peterson next door. I'll be back soon. He hoped that was true. The ride to the palace felt like it took forever. David's mind raced with worst-case scenarios. Would they deport him? Send him back to Earth? What would happen to Tommy? They had nothing to go back to. He was led through the grand hallways, past servants and officials who stared at him like he was some kind of criminal. Finally, he reached the throne room. The massive doors opened, and there she was. Queen Zara, sitting on her throne, looking powerful and intimidating. David approached nervously and bowed like he'd seen people do in videos. Your Majesty, you may stand, Zara said. Her voice was calm but firm. Do you know why you're here? Because I went into the royal wing without permission. I'm really sorry. I heard your daughter crying during the storm and I just wanted to make sure she was all right. I didn't touch anything or... You sat with her, Zara interrupted. You told her stories. You made her feel safe enough to sleep peacefully for the first time in weeks. David didn't know what to say to that. Zara stood up and walked down from her throne. Up close, David could see the exhaustion in her eyes. This queen might rule a planet, but she was also a tired mother at the end of her rope. I've gone through 15 nannies in 2 months, Zara said. 15 highly trained, experienced caregivers. My daughter made each one quit. She's angry all the time. She breaks things. She refuses to cooperate with anyone. But last night you calmed her down in minutes. How? David thought about it. I just talked to her. Like she was a regular kid having a hard time, not a princess who needed to be perfect. Zara studied him carefully. Tell me about yourself. You have a son, correct? Yes, ma'am, Tommy, he's 7. It's just the 2 of us. His mother passed away 3 years ago. I'm sorry for your loss. I understand that pain. I lost my husband 2 years ago. There was a moment of shared understanding between them. 2 single parents doing their best in difficult circumstances. I have a proposal for you, Zara said. I want you to become Lyra's companion and caretaker. David thought he'd heard wrong. I'm sorry, what? You'd live in the palace. Bring your son. He'd attend the palace school with Lyra. You'd receive a substantial salary, full benefits, everything you need. It sounded too good to be true, but I'm just a janitor. I don't know anything about being a nanny or royal protocol or, you know how to connect with a hurting child. That's more important than any protocol. Zara paused. However, there are conditions. You must sign a contract. If you fail or quit within 6 months, you'll be permanently banned from this planet. You'd have to return to Earth. The weight of that condition hit David hard. 6 months. If he couldn't do this job, he and Tommy would lose everything. But if he succeeded, Tommy could go to a good school. They'd have a real home. David wouldn't have to work 3 jobs anymore. He could actually be a father to his son. I'll do it, David said. The next few days were chaos. David and Tommy moved into the palace. They were given a beautiful suite of rooms, bigger than their entire apartment had been. Tommy couldn't believe it. He ran from room to room, excited about everything, but not everyone was happy about the new arrangement. The palace staff was scandalized. A human, a former janitor, taking care of the princess. It went against everything they believed about proper royal service. The head butler, a stern alien named Vendris, made his disapproval very clear. He gave David impossible tasks, criticized everything he did, and made snide comments about humans not understanding civilized society. David tried to ignore it, but it was hard. Then there was Princess Lyra herself. When David arrived at her room for their first official day together, she threw a toy at him. I don't want you here. Go away. Good morning to you too, David said calmly, dodging another thrown toy. I said go away. You're not my nanny. I hate nannies. David sat down on the floor, a safe distance away from the flying toys. That's fine. I'm not a nanny anyway. I'm just a guy who's going to hang out with you for a while. I don't want to hang out. Leave me alone. Can't do that. It's my job now. But here's the thing. I brought my son Tommy with me. He's 7, about your age. He's pretty lonely. Doesn't have any friends on this planet. I thought maybe you 2 could meet sometime. Lyra stopped throwing things. A friend? Yeah, but only if you want to. No pressure. For the first time, Lyra looked uncertain instead of angry. She'd never had a real friend before. Other noble children were always so formal around her, so careful. They treated her like she was made of glass because she was a princess. Does he like to play? She asked quietly. Loves to play. Also loves to eat snacks. We could have snacks together if you want. Lyra considered this. What kind of snacks? What's your favorite? Sweet berry tarts. But I'm not allowed to have them before lunch. Well, I don't know all the rules yet. So maybe just this once we could bend that rule a tiny bit. A small smile appeared on Lyra's face. Over the next few weeks, David introduced his approach. He treated Lyra like a normal child, not a princess. She had to make her own bed each morning. She had to help set the table for meals. She earned privileges by cooperating and lost them when she didn't. The palace staff thought he was crazy. You can't make a princess do chores. But Queen Zara, watching from a distance, saw something amazing happening. Her daughter was learning responsibility. More importantly, she was learning that her actions had consequences. David also introduced Lyra to Tommy, and the 2 children clicked immediately. Tommy didn't care that Lyra was a princess. To him, she was just another kid who wanted someone to play with. They built forts out of furniture. They played made-up games in the palace gardens. They got dirty and loud and acted like normal children. Lyra started talking to David about real things, about how much she missed her father, about how angry she was that he'd left her, about how scared she was that her mother would disappear too. David listened without judging. He shared his own story about losing his wife, about the anger and sadness that Tommy had felt. He told Lyra that all those feelings were okay, but hurting other people wasn't the answer. These conversations happened during simple moments. While they were planting flowers in the garden, while they were making human-style pancakes in the kitchen, while they were drawing pictures together. Queen Zara found herself drawn to these scenes. She started joining them for dinner, breaking every royal tradition by eating casual meals with her daughter and the caretaker. She watched David parent with a patience she'd never learned. Her own parents had been cold and formal, more concerned with duty than love. After a month, something remarkable had happened. Princess Lyra was laughing again. She still had difficult moments, sure, but they were getting rarer. She'd started saying please and thank you. She helped clean up her toys without being asked. The change was so dramatic that even the skeptical palace staff had to admit something was working, but not everyone was pleased. Some members of the royal council believed David had too much influence over the princess. They whispered about humans corrupting alien traditions. They questioned his methods and motives, and someone decided to take action. Strange things started happening. David's carefully planned schedules would go missing. Supplies he needed for activities with Lyra would disappear. Once, the special allergy-free food he'd ordered for Lyra was replaced with regular food that could have made her sick. Luckily, David caught it in time. He knew someone was trying to sabotage him to make him fail so he'd have to leave. But he didn't know who. Meanwhile, Queen Zara was facing her own crisis. She was spending more and more time with David and the children. She looked forward to their casual dinners, to hearing David's stories about Earth, to seeing him interact so naturally with Lyra and Tommy. And she was starting to feel things she hadn't felt since her husband died. She was falling for him. It was ridiculous, she told herself. He was human. He was a former janitor. There were ancient laws forbidding royalty from marrying outside their species. But her heart didn't care about any of that. She loved how he made her laugh, how he challenged her when she was being too rigid, how he saw her as just Zara, not the queen. David felt it too. He tried to ignore it. He was there to take care of Lyra, nothing more. Getting involved with the queen would be the stupidest thing he could possibly do. But he couldn't help noticing how beautiful she was when she smiled, how smart and strong she was, how she was trying so hard to be a good mother while carrying the weight of an entire planet on her shoulders. One evening, they were in the garden after the children had gone to bed. They'd started having these quiet conversations, just the two of them, talking about everything and nothing. "Can I ask you something?" Zara said. "How do you do it? How do you stay so patient with Lyra?" David thought about it. "I think about Tommy, about what he needed when his mother died. He didn't need someone to be perfect. He needed someone to be present, someone to sit with him in the hard moments and not try to fix everything right away. My parents never did that," Zara admitted. "They were training me to be queen from the moment I could walk. There was no time for feelings or weakness. That must have been lonely." It was. She looked at him. "You've taught me so much about parenting, about connection. I don't know how to thank you." "You already have. You gave Tommy and me a real home, a chance at a better life." They were sitting close, their hands almost touching. The air between them felt electric. Zara knew she should move away, maintain professional distance. Instead, she stayed exactly where she was. "David," she started to say, but was interrupted by Tommy running into the garden. "Dad, Lyra had a bad dream. She's asking for you." The moment broke and David jumped up to go comfort Lyra. But something had shifted between him and the queen. They both knew it. The next day, disaster struck. The palace was hosting a major state dinner with dignitaries from across the planet. It was one of the most important events of the year. Queen Zara would be busy all evening, unable to spend time with Lyra. Lyra didn't understand. She'd gotten used to having her mother around more. Now she was being told to stay in her room while everyone else got to be at the fancy party. "It's not fair," Lyra cried. "You always choose them over me." "Sweetheart, I have responsibilities," Zara tried to explain. "I'll come see you as soon as the dinner is over." "You always say that, but you never do." "You don't love me anymore." Zara felt her heart breaking, but she had 300 guests waiting. She had to go. She looked at David desperately. "I've got this," David assured her. "Go, we'll be fine," but they weren't fine. Lyra's frustration had been building for days. All the old feelings came flooding back. Her mother was abandoning her again, just like she always did. Just like her father had abandoned her by dying. The little girl's tantrum escalated. She screamed and cried and threw things. Then, before David could stop her, she ran out of the room. She ran straight into the grand hall where the state dinner was taking place. 300 distinguished guests turned to stare as the princess burst in, tears streaming down her face, yelling at the top of her lungs, "You don't love me. You only love being queen. I hate you. I hate everyone." The room went completely silent. Queen Zara stood frozen, humiliation and heartbreak warring on her face. Every eye was on them, watching to see what would happen next. David appeared in the doorway. He didn't run to Lyra, he didn't yell at her. He just walked calmly across the room and knelt down beside her. "Hey," he said quietly, ignoring all the watching eyes. "I know you're upset, and that's okay, but this isn't the way to handle it. Let's go somewhere private and talk." "No, I want my mom." "I know you do, and she wants to be with you too. But right now she has a job to do. Just like when I had to work at night and couldn't be home with Tommy. Remember we talked about that?" Lyra was still crying, but she was listening. "Let's make a deal," David continued. "You come with me right now, and I promise that as soon as this dinner is over, your mom will come straight to your room. And tomorrow she'll take the whole day off to spend just with you. How does that sound?" "Really?" Lyra sniffled. "Really? But you have to come with me now and let your mom finish her work. Can you do that?" Slowly, Lyra nodded. David picked her up and she buried her face in his shoulder. As he carried her out of the hall, he looked at Queen Zara and gave her a reassuring nod. The dinner continued, but the whispers had started. Some people were impressed by how David had handled the situation. Others thought it showed weakness in the royal family, and some powerful people on the royal council thought it proved that David was a bad influence who needed to be removed. Lord Catherine, head of the royal council, had been watching David carefully for weeks. He didn't like anything he saw. This human was changing too much, too fast. The queen was acting less formal. The princess was being raised like a common child. Worst of all, Catherine had noticed the way Zara looked at David, the way they talked together. The way she smiled around him, it was inappropriate, improper, against every tradition, and Catherine was going to put a stop to it. He started spreading doubts among the other council members. The human is too familiar with Her Majesty. He doesn't respect proper protocols. He's teaching the princess to disrespect authority. What will happen to our kingdom if this continues? Some council members agreed. Others weren't sure, but Catherine was patient. He would find a way to get rid of David permanently. Meanwhile, David and Zara were growing closer despite themselves. They tried to keep things professional, but late-night conversations kept happening. Accidental touches lasted a little too long. They found excuses to spend time together. One night after the children were asleep, they were in the palace library. Zara was showing David ancient books about her planet's history. "This is amazing," David said, carefully turning the pages of a 1,000-year-old text. "On Earth, we'd keep something this valuable in a museum behind glass. Knowledge should be touched and used, not just looked at," Zara said. She was standing very close to him. David turned to respond and found himself inches from her face. They stared at each other. The air felt thick with everything they weren't saying. "Zara," David whispered. He never called her by her first name. "We can't." "I know," but she didn't move away. "The laws. Your position. Don't say you're just a janitor. You're the man who saved my daughter, who showed me how to be a better mother, who makes me laugh for the first time in years. I'm also human. Your people would never accept it." "Some wouldn't," Zara admitted. "But maybe it's time for things to change." They were so close now. David's hand reached up, almost touching her face, but then he pulled back. "I can't risk your position, or what's best for Lyra and Tommy. They need stability." Zara nodded sadly. He was right. But knowing he was right didn't make it hurt any less. What they didn't know was that Vendris, the head butler, had seen everything. The old servant was conflicted. He'd come to respect David despite his initial prejudice. He'd seen how much happier the princess was. But he also knew this relationship could cause serious problems. Lord Kethran found out about the library incident from another source, one of his spies among the palace staff. This was exactly what he needed. He called an emergency council meeting. "The Queen is compromising her position," Kethran announced to the gathered council members. "She's developing inappropriate feelings for a human servant. This cannot be allowed to continue. What do you suggest?" Another council member asked. "We remove the problem. Find a reason to dismiss the human and send him back to Earth." But there was no good reason. David was doing an excellent job. Lyra was thriving. Even the council had to admit that. So Catherine decided to create a reason. The palace had a treasury full of priceless artifacts. Ancient jewels, historical documents, items of deep cultural significance. Security was tight, but Catherine had access to everything as head of the council. Late one night, he snuck into the treasury and took 3 valuable jewels. Then, using his authority, he had them planted in David's quarters while David was working with Lyra. The next morning, a routine security check was announced. Guards searched all the palace staff quarters, and of course they found the jewels hidden in David's room. David was arrested immediately. He didn't understand what was happening. "I didn't take those. I've never even been in the treasury." But the evidence was clear. The jewels were in his room. He had no alibi for the night they went missing. And some council members had been waiting for an excuse to get rid of him. Theft from the royal treasury carries immediate deportation, Lord Ketharan declared with barely concealed satisfaction. "He'll be on a ship back to Earth by tomorrow." Tommy was hysterical when he found out. Dad didn't do anything wrong. "He didn't steal anything." Lyra was just as upset. She refused to leave her room. She wouldn't eat or talk to anyone. All the progress she'd made was crumbling. She'd trusted David, and now he was being taken away just like her father had been taken away. Queen Zara felt like her world was ending. She knew David wouldn't steal, but the evidence seemed overwhelming. She demanded a full investigation, but Ketharan insisted the law was clear. The criminal had to be deported immediately. That night, Zara couldn't sleep. Something felt wrong about all of this. It was too convenient, too perfectly timed. She started her own secret investigation, questioning servants, reviewing security footage, checking records, and she found something interesting. The security cameras for the treasury had been disabled for exactly 20 minutes on the night the jewels went missing. That required high-level authorization. She checked who had that level of access. Lord Ketharan's name was at the top of the list. Zara kept digging. She discovered that Ketharan had been in the palace that night when he claimed to be at home. She found a servant who'd seen him near the treasury. And she found Vendris, the head butler, who'd witnessed something damning. "I saw Lord Ketharan entering David's quarters late that night," Vendris admitted when Zara questioned him privately. "I thought nothing of it at the time. But now, Your Majesty, I believe David is innocent. I've watched him with the princess. He's a good man. He wouldn't steal." Zara now had enough evidence, but publicly accusing the head of the royal council would cause a political crisis. Many council members were loyal to Ketharan. This could tear the kingdom apart, but she couldn't let an innocent man be deported, and she couldn't let her daughter lose another person she loved. Queen Zara made her decision. Tomorrow there would be a public hearing, and she would expose the truth no matter what it cost her. The Great Hall was packed. Every council member was present, along with nobles, officials, and even some common citizens who'd heard about the case. David stood in the center, flanked by guards, looking tired and defeated. Tommy and Lyra sat in the front row, both children holding hands, their faces wet with tears. Lord Ketharan stepped forward. "The evidence is clear. This human David Chen stole from the royal treasury. According to our laws, he must be immediately deported and banned from our planet forever. I move that I have new evidence." Queen Zara's voice rang out clearly. She stood up from her throne, commanding attention. "Evidence that changes everything." Ketharan's confident expression faltered slightly. "Your Majesty, the law is clear. We need the truth," Zara interrupted. "And the truth is that David Chen was framed." Gasps echoed through the hall. Ketharan tried to protest, but Zara raised her hand for silence. The security cameras for the treasury were disabled for exactly 20 minutes the night the jewels went missing. That requires high-level authorization. Lord Ketharan, you were one of 3 people with that access, and you were seen in the palace that night near the treasury, despite claiming to be at home. "Circumstantial," Ketharan said, but his voice was shaky now. "Perhaps. But I also have a witness who saw you entering David's quarters late that same night. Would you like to explain what you were doing there?" Ketharan opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked around the hall, seeing that many council members were now looking at him with suspicion. "Furthermore," Zara continued, "I've reviewed the evidence of David's time here. He's never shown any interest in material wealth. He works hard. He's devoted to his son and to my daughter. He had no motive to steal. But you, Lord Catherine, had a motive to frame him. You've made your disapproval of his presence very clear. The human has corrupted our traditions. Catherine finally exploded. He's making the princess act like a common child. He's causing you to forget your duties. He's helped my daughter heal, Zara said firmly. He's shown me that there's more to being a queen than following every ancient tradition without question. And yes, I've developed feelings for him, deep feelings, which I believe is the real reason you wanted him gone. The hall erupted in shocked murmurs. Zara had just admitted publicly that she had romantic feelings for a human. For a servant. It was unprecedented. David stared at her in disbelief. She was risking everything. For him. The laws forbid it, someone in the council shouted. Royalty cannot marry outside our species. Then perhaps those laws need to change, Zara said. They were written in a time of fear, when our people rarely encountered other species. But times have changed. Our kingdom has changed, and I believe we should change with it. This is madness, Kethran yelled. You would throw away centuries of tradition for a human? You would disgrace the crown? I would choose love, Zara said simply. I would choose someone who makes me and my daughter happy. Someone who's shown more integrity and wisdom than most nobles I know. Someone who sees me as a person, not just a title. Lord Catherine saw his support crumbling. In desperation, he played his final card. If you pursue this path, I will call for a vote of no confidence. Half the council will support me. This kingdom will be torn apart by civil unrest. Is your human worth that? Zara felt her resolve waver. She couldn't put her people through a political crisis. Maybe Kethran was right. Maybe she was being selfish. Then something unexpected happened. Princess Lyra stood up. The 5-year-old girl walked to the center of the hall, standing right next to David. Every eye turned to her. I want to say something, Lyra announced in her small but clear voice. Sweetheart, you don't have to... Zara started. Yes, I do. Lyra looked around at all the powerful adults staring at her. She was scared, but she was also brave. David had taught her to be brave. My dad died, Lyra said, and I was really, really sad and angry. I was mean to everyone because I hurt so much inside. 15 nannies left because I was so mean, but David stayed. He wasn't scared of me when I was angry. He just sat with me and told me stories. He taught me that it's okay to feel sad, but it's not okay to hurt other people. Her voice got stronger. David taught me how to be a better person. He taught my mom how to be happy again. He brought Tommy, and now I have a real friend. He makes our family better. And if you send him away, you're going to make me sad again. Is that what you want? To make the princess sad? It was manipulative in the way only a child could be, but it was also completely honest. Several council members looked uncomfortable. Tommy stood up next to Lyra. David is the best dad in the universe, and he'd be really good for your planet too. He's always helping people and fixing things and making things better. You should give him a chance. The 2 children stood together, united in defending the man who'd brought them together. Their courage moved many hearts in the hall. An older council member, Lady Thera, stood up. Lord Kethran, you speak of tradition, but isn't compassion also part of our tradition? Isn't wisdom? Isn't putting the well-being of our people first? She turned to Zara. Your Majesty, I move that David Chen's charges be dismissed due to lack of credible evidence and clear signs of a setup. Furthermore, I move that we review the antiquated marriage laws. Seconded, said another council member. More voices joined in. Not everyone agreed, but enough did. The tide was turning. Lord Kethran saw he'd lost. In a last desperate attempt to save face, he stormed out of the hall, taking a few loyal supporters with him. David was officially cleared of all charges. The guards released him, and immediately Tommy and Lyra ran to him, hugging him tightly. David held both children, overwhelmed with relief. Queen Zara approached them. I'm sorry you had to go through that. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from Kethran's schemes. You exposed the truth, David said. You risked your position for me. Why? Because you were worth it? Because what we feel for each other is worth fighting for. She looked at him directly. I meant what I said in there. I've fallen in love with you, David. I know it's complicated. I know there will be challenges. But I want to try, if you do. David looked at Tommy, at Lyra, and then back at Zara. I've been in love with you for weeks, he admitted. I just didn't think we could ever make it work. Maybe we can't, Zara said honestly. But maybe we can. We won't know unless we try. The council debated for weeks. In the end, they reached a compromise. The marriage laws would remain in place for now, but David would be given an official position as royal family advisor. He and Zara could be together, though they couldn't officially marry yet. It would be a trial period to show the kingdom that their relationship could work. Over the next year, David proved himself over and over. He helped establish programs for working parents in the kingdom. He opened the palace gardens for public visits. He advised the queen on social issues, bringing a common person's perspective to royal decisions. Most importantly, he continued to be an amazing father to both Tommy and Lyra. The children thrived. Lyra became confident and kind, learning from both David's patience and her mother's strength. Tommy was adopted as an official member of the royal family, gaining the education and opportunities he'd never had on Earth. Queen Zara became a better ruler. With David's support, she implemented progressive changes while respecting important traditions. She learned to balance being queen with being a mother and a partner. Public opinion slowly shifted. People saw that this human brought out the best in their queen. They saw the happy, well-adjusted princess. They saw a royal family that felt more real, more relatable, more human in the best sense of the word. Finally, after a full year, the council took another vote. This time, the majority voted to change the marriage laws. Love, they decided, was more important than outdated traditions. The wedding was beautiful. It blended traditions from both Zara's planet and Earth. Lyra was the flower girl, beaming with happiness. Tommy stood next to David as his best man, proud and excited. As David and Zara exchanged vows, promising to love each other across all differences, many in the audience cried. It was more than just a wedding. It was a symbol of change, of hope, of the idea that love could bridge any divide. 5 years later, Princess Lyra was 10 years old, confident and compassionate. She was being prepared to one day rule, but she'd never forgotten the lessons David taught her. Tommy was now an official prince, studying engineering and helping design improvements to the kingdom's infrastructure. David served as royal advisor on family affairs, helping countless parents across the kingdom raise happy, healthy children. He never forgot where he came from, and he used his position to advocate for working families and children's welfare. And Queen Zara ruled with wisdom and compassion, her husband by her side, proving every day that the strongest thing a leader could do was choose love over fear, change over stagnation, and people over protocol. The former janitor who once cleaned palace floors now stood as an equal partner to the queen, not because of his title or position, but because of his character, his kindness, and his unwavering belief that every person, royal or common, alien or human, deserved to be treated with dignity and love. And they all lived, if not perfectly, then at least very, very happily.